Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is David Freese. I'm the mayor of Tonganoxie, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Mr. Porter, would you please call the roll?
Miss McCutcheon,
Here.
Miss Stevens,
Here.
Mr. Dale,
Here.
Mr. Hempel,
Here.
Mr. Donnelly.
Here.
All present, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. And if you all would care to join us, we're going to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag's over here in the corner. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Okay. Item 2 is approval of minutes. Is there any discussion on the minutes, or is there a motion to approve?
This is Laura Lee. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Moving on to the consent agenda. Anyone have any questions about the bill payments? Mr. Brakovic, were there anything unusual this month that was we should look at?
No, I don't believe so. I think most of this is routine.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion to pass.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Nothing under old business. Normally we have an open period during our meetings. Did anyone to sign up to speak, Mr. Porter?
No signups, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. All right, moving on to new business. Presentation of the bid results pending award for general obligation temporary notes. We have to look at A and B together, but vote separately, correct?
That's correct. Items A and B are related.
Okay, take it away, Mr. Brakovic.
Thanks, Mayor. Item A is presentation of the bid results pending award for the general obligation temporary notes, Series 2021A. This is related to the ongoing discussion we've had about financing the Interceptor sanitary sewer line from the water treatment plant to the business park. We did Baker Tilly, our financial advisors, and we have Ben Hart with Baker Tilly on the phone. That sale was held this morning, and I will ask Ben to give us a summary of how that went. So, Ben, can you hear us?
I can. Thanks, George. So we sold $975,000 this morning. I'm sorry. We bid $975,000 in 12-month temporary notes. George said the bids were at 10 a.m. this morning. We actually received 3 bids representing 3 banks. Sometimes those banks or those bids will have a bunch of different banks in them. In this case, it was just 3 bids, 3 banks. The winner for the lowest tick or interest cost was Commerce Bank at 0.3661%. It was less than 0.5% on the bids themselves. So that was Commerce Bank. At this point, the bids are very competitive based on comparable transactions and market indices that we have. They actually beat our estimates. Our estimates were 0.9%. The market continues to go down for interest rates, especially in the first year to 2 years. So you guys are really taking advantage of extremely low rates to help put this project together. The city did undergo a Moody's rating, and the firm reaffirmed the A2 rating with strengths in the stable financial position and favorable access to employment centers with Douglas County and Kansas City. So with that, we recommend, as your financial advisor, we recommend awarding the 2021A general temporary notes to Commerce Bank. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thanks, sir. Are there any questions? Mr. Donnelly, can you hear us all right?
Yep, sounds good. The rate's incredible.
Okay. No questions? Any discussion? Any more information that we need, Mr. Brakovich?
No, Mayor, if you're comfortable with the presentation and the recommendation, we can simply move to item B, which then is the official action the elected body would need to take tonight, and that's resolution number 02-21-01, which would authorize and direct the issuance, sale, and delivery of those GO temp notes, Series 2021A, in the amount we just discussed.
This is Chris. I would make that motion to approve resolution 02-2101, authorizing and directing the issuance, sale, and delivery of general obligation temporary notes series 2021A.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Mr. Porter, would you mind calling a roll call vote on this?
Yes, Ms. McCutcheon,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Dale,
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly,
Yes.
Mr. Hempel.
Yes.
All ayes, Mayor. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Next up is item C, correct?
That's correct. Really, items C, D, and E all relate to purchases being requested by the Public Works Department. Mr. Porter's been working very closely with Mr. Heskett to get these items ready. Most of them are going to be familiar to you because they were built in as we developed the budget last summer for this year. But with that, I will be happy to turn it over to Mr. Porter and Mr. Heskett.
Thanks, George. This is Dan Porter. The first item for discussion and consideration of approval is the purchase of a mini excavator. The mini excavator is an item in the Public Works equipment that really is critical. It serves a variety of functions, underground work, and focused mostly on the city's water and sewer utilities. We do have several bids collected for consideration, but I want to outline first, this is a little bit non-traditional bid collection because it represents a class of equipment. These items are all somewhat unique. They're generally the same size, generally can perform the same functions. But when Kent and his operators reviewed the equipment, they conducted on-site tests or demos with each of these vendors and evaluated the equipment's ability to perform. And so despite similar horsepower or other ratings, they did notice a discernible difference in performance. And so the three bids collected are reflected in the agenda statement, but Clark Equipment Company, doing business as Bobcat Company, at a bid of $40,382.07 was the item that the Public Works Department operators unanimously supported moving forward with as the best performer and best suited for our work. The budget assumptions developed last August when the budget was approved were a total cost up to $50,000, so we're well within that threshold. Included in this purchase is the trade-in of the existing mini excavator, and that's common across all the bids. I think Kent could answer any specific questions you have, but we're excited at this bid outcome, and there's a draft motion for the recommendation of approval of the purchase included in the agenda statement. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Heskett, do you have anything to share with council? If you wouldn't mind standing to the podium.
Dean did a really good job of describing what we use it for. We do use it in the street department a lot too, making street repairs. It's just one of the first pieces of equipment out the door when we use it. Lately, it has been giving us troubles. We don't know exactly what the cause is, but we think we know what it is. We can't get parts for it right now. It's been very difficult to see what it's doing. We'd really like to get this approved tonight and move forward.
Okay. Does any council, do you have any questions for Mr. Heskett on this?
I don't have any. It appears that they were up budgeted, and asking the only question. All three of these items, even though we'll vote on them one at a time, they were all approved in the budget prior to this conversation, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no questions, is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize the purchase of one E35 33 HP R Series Bobcat compact excavator from Clark Equipment, DBA Bobcat Company, for an amount not to exceed $40,382.07.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. Mr. Porter, would you mind calling the roll for the vote, please?
Ms. McCutcheon,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Dale,
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly,
Yes.
Mr. Hempel.
Yes.
All ayes, Mayor. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're on to item D, and is that Dan's?
Yes,
Mr.
yes,
Porter,
Mayor.
go ahead.
So this item is another 2021 budgeted purchase, and it includes the purchase of two F-250 utility trucks that make up a good segment of the city's public works fleet. These vehicles are over 10 years old, and they were included in discussions of the 2021 budget approved last August. Kent Heskett went out and collected bids for these vehicles, and those include particular equipment to attach snowplows and new snowplows that would be fitted on each truck as one of the roles that these vehicles perform during inclement weather is snow removal throughout the city in conjunction with our dump trucks and other service vehicles. The two purchases are budgeted at up to $45,000 each. So what you see tonight is a total cost, including the snow plows, of $37,082 each. That price is really favorable, and Kent was excited to see the outcome of that. We pay for these out of the sewer and water capital funds for the most part. And so being able to retain funds beyond the cost of these that were budgeted and allocated is great for those accounts, and will preserve good fund balance in those funds to fund any unforeseen emergencies or equipment breakdowns. The low bid was from Laird Noller Ford. You can see that it was very close margin, and that reflects the governmental purchase price that each of these dealerships has to work with, and they make a decision to be a little bit lower or a little bit higher, and that's how things shook out. So the motion we're looking for is included in the agenda packet. I'm sorry that it's a little lengthy, but the total cost for these two items is an amount not to exceed $74,164. But happy to answer any particular questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Mr. Heskett, I did a little research on my own, asking some other municipalities about their replacement policies for vehicles. Could you share with the council and the public how it is you determine when a vehicle needs replaced?
Well, currently we use the, I believe it's the APWA recommended replacement schedule, which is, it works out to about 10 years on these. And we do that to make sure that we continually turn over equipment, so we don't have a huge balloon one year of 5 trucks that need to be replaced. We can systematically replace them as we're moving forward.
And one more question. Can you perhaps explain the importance of having 2 snowplows at this time?
We have two now that we're going to replace with these 2, so we're not going to add any additional to the fleet, but it just speeds up the amount of time it takes us to clear the town and get citizens out moving.
Thank you very much, Mr. Heskett. Council, do you have any questions?
I'd just like to confirm the total price for one truck and one snowplow is the $37,082. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was reading it right.
The agenda statement, I apologize, is a little misleading. It demonstrates the full price, and then I broke out below that the snowplow, and that's reflected in the bids. I had to double check that today too, so sorry about the confusion.
Council, do you have any more questions for Mr. Heskett or Mr. Porter?
I have one question. How will we dispose of the other two trucks? that were-
We'll use Purple Wave for those.
Okay.
And the draft recommendation for the approval motion includes authority to list those on Purple Wave when we have receipt of the new vehicles to help clear things up for the council and speed that along.
Mr. Porter or Mr. Heskett, either of you, do you recall what that last vehicle that we put up on Purple Wave sold for?
I believe the city's part was 16,500.
I put in a bid for 2,000, it didn't get it, so. Okay, any other questions? I would entertain a motion at this point.
I'll make a motion to authorize the purchase of two 2021 F-250 utility service trucks, along with the purchase and installation of a snow plow on each vehicle from Laird Noller Ford for an amount not to exceed $74,164, and to authorize the disposition of two 2001 F-250 utility service trucks on Purple Wave online auction site upon receipt of the new vehicles.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Porter, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Dale,
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly,
Yes.
Mr. Hempel,
Yes.
Ms. McCutcheon.
Yes.
All ayes, Mayor. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter.
All right, our last item is listed as item E, our last purchase approval. And this item is probably one that the council will have some familiarity with from previous approvals. The wastewater plant needs to be the end destination of discharge from our water treatment plant at the corner of 4th Street and the Public Works Access Drive. That project was at the request of KDHE during one of their every 2 or 3 year inspections. And so we have our next inspection scheduled later this month, I think. And so we're hoping to be able to show them that we're almost done and have it in the ground. Previous approvals included engineering assessment of the issue, engineering plan development, construction plans. BG Consultants has completed that. And so now we're at the point where we need to order or purchase the commodities necessary for our Public Works group to install that wastewater conveyance line. So this project will include several items estimated to total just under $16,000. So Kent has gotten together a very good summary of those items in the agenda packet. You'll see listed in there precast structures comprise the majority of the cost. That includes a manhole and a concrete box. And then other commodities are estimated based on what we think we'll need to help lay that equipment underground and ensure it's secured. There is some give to those numbers. They're good estimates, but to be conservative, we'd like to ask for budget authority to spend up to $16,250 on all of the items included in this project. But we can answer any questions, but in summary, we're excited to be wrapping this up after over a year and ready to move forward and get it done.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Heskett?
No, this has been a long time coming, getting this project put together. We're happy to do it and save the city money by not hiring a contractor to do it.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, do you have any questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the purchase of materials required for the water treatment plant discharge connection to the wastewater treatment plant project construction for an amount not to exceed $16,250.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Porter, will you call a roll call vote on this, please?
Mr. Dale,
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly,
Yes.
Mr. Hempel,
Yes.
Ms. McCutcheon,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens.
Yes.
All ayes, Mayor. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Heskett. I apologize for not recognizing you earlier, but I don't see you out of yellow very much. Thank you. Moving on to item F, discuss research on temporary parking options for downtown business district.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. So as Councilperson Dale brought up at 2 previous meetings, the request to take a look, and I'll generalize it, so Mr. Dale, if I don't hit it on the head, please feel free to correct me. But the general thought was, can we explore something to allow some sort of temporary or short-term parking along 4th Street so that the storefronts that are occupied by a business that has a need for curbside delivery or some sort of quick exchange of goods and services could be accommodated. And so our initial research in both the city code and the standard traffic ordinances didn't really identify a path forward with that. We did take another deep dive at it, and in the memo that's in your packets tonight, the city code as it currently exists does not provide for an option. But we felt that we did find a couple of options that could be considered within the standard traffic ordinances for Kansas cities. For short, that goes by STO. For the city, we are currently under the 2018 year STO, and so we found 2 provisions that are fairly unique, but would provide an avenue for 2 separate reasons. So the first is Section 3, which is Emergency, Temporary, and Experimental Regulations, and in short, that would allow, by statute, up to 90 days to explore temporary parking arrangements related to a specific condition, concern, hazard, and so the police chief or the city engineer could use that Section 3 to make a determination that the special conditions associated with COVID-19 and the restrictions in terms of how many people can be inside an establishment, social distancing, that really brings up the need for more curbside pickup or an exchange of those goods to occur outside of the business. And so again, that could allow for 90 days. It does have to go through either the police chief or the city engineer. The second option is under Section 97, which is limited time parking zones, which again allows a city to create short-term parking. I think we've seen it in other locations where it's 15 minutes or less or 10 minutes or less. I think we can designate whatever the short-term time we want to specify. And then that's allowed, again, that could be more of a permanent feature if you wanted to keep something around a little bit longer. So again, I don't know if these 2 options are necessarily independent of each other, or if we wanted to do something, again, to offset some of the COVID issues, or if we're looking for something a little more long-term. So Anna Kerstalik, the city attorney, had a chance to review these. She weighed in that both of those could be applicable should the city choose to pursue those. So the next step we wanted to look at is, well, there's a couple of issues. Are either one of those really a good, either short-term or long-term fit? And one of the first things we wanted to take a look at is the physical conditions for parking as it exists currently on 4th Street. So right now on 4th Street, between Green and I believe Main, we have about 39 storefronts. Everyone's parking is limited on 4th Street, limited to parallel parking and unmarked stalls against the curb. So really the most enforceable thing is no one can be parked there for an extended period of time. I believe the limitation is 72 hours, and you have to be parked so far away, so many inches away from the curb itself. Having an office window that looks out along 4th Street, I can guarantee you everybody honors both of those things fairly well. The other issue then is if we take a look at maybe some of the communities that did take some of these more restrictive parking requirements, again, whether it's short-term or curbside delivery or dedicated parking spaces to a certain business establishment, what were some of the physical characteristics that were different than what we currently have on 4th Street? So in the memo, I just use Lawrence, Kansas, and parking along Massachusetts streets as an example. So they have two things that we don't. First, they have defined parking stalls. So whether it's a striped space or a space defined by physical barriers, and I guess an additional thing I could have included is, as opposed to the parallel parking, they have head-in parking into those defined parking spots. On top of that, they have a pay-for-time metered situation there where it's, I think primarily coin-fed meters. Now, I did notice that the city did go through and adopt a resolution where some of those meters will have a sign hanging in front of a storefront that says this space, and most typically it's 1 to maybe 2 spaces. This space is assigned to ABC Restaurant. It's a 5-minute pickup type slot. So from an enforcement standpoint, having a clearly defined parking space or parking stall and a way to identify that via the meter or a sign on a meter, it makes it pretty easy to enforce because you can see if someone's parked there, you can mark a tire, you can time it to see if they come in and out. Those aren't really physically what we have on 4th Street now. What would it take to do that? I think we'd have to explore what those options are. I think we could toss out a lot of ideas, but without talking through with our traffic engineer, we probably could envision how do we define a parking space in the middle of a block up against the curb. But I definitely would want to run that through our traffic engineer to make sure we're not in violation of any traffic laws or other components of the standard traffic ordinance by doing that. And so we haven't done that yet because we were waiting to get a little further additional direction from this elected body. The other issue that we wanted to explore is staff had not been contacted directly by any of the merchants located on 4th Street. I understand that maybe a handful or a few have reached out to one or more of the city council members expressing their concern over this, but I was suggesting in the memo it might be a better practice for us to directly engage all the storefronts to see what their concerns would be if we went to a program like that, or conversely, what their interest would be in participating in a program like that. And then the final piece that we didn't really put a lot of detail into the memo, but I feel like I've touched on it a little bit tonight, is simply the enforcement component to this. I think at the end of the day, we would need to come back to more of an honor system here. If we're talking about creating a 5-minute parking spot, we know how our police department is staffed during the course of a day. The odds that they're not engaged on something else when somebody wants to enforce their 5-minute parking, it may create, if we pass something, it might create an illusion that we're going to carry a heavier hand on this than what we're really capable of from an enforcement standpoint. So like I said, I didn't really flush that all the way through with Chief Lawson, but I think that there's some general concerns, again, from the enforcement side. So I feel like I've said a mouthful, but I'm interested to hear your feedback or any other questions you might have for myself or Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Brockovich. Did you do any research with Lawrence to see if they charged a fee for blocking off those parking spots for those places that have outdoor dining and what have you?
No, we didn't reach out directly to the staff, but it looked like the city of Lawrence had gone through several reiterations of what they were doing. So the first was to change their on-street parking to accommodate having businesses move tables and chairs out onto the sidewalk. And so that eliminated some of the diagonal head-in parking and instead created parallel parking, short-term parallel parking. They seem to have, at some point during the COVID crisis, moved away from that, not in every location. I'm guessing as certain storefronts might have closed down, they eliminated that, but there's still some parts that have that sidewalk presence, and in those cases, they just eliminated the parking spaces. But as I mentioned, they do have quite a few of the restaurants that have just a sign up that says, you know, pickup only, 5-minute parking for this specific restaurant. Now, that was in addition, they already had some of the metered spots were for short-term parking, and I can't remember if it was 10 or 15 minutes. So they are, prior to the COVID crisis, they already had accounted for some short-term parking. And then in the rear, or access through the other side of the alley, just either direction off Mass Street, is sometimes it's metered parking, sometimes it's free parking on those sides. So there's quite a few options there.
Thank you, Mr. Brockovich. Council, do you have any questions? Any discussion at all?
Mayor, I have 4 concerns.
Okay.
The first one is handicap. In your study, are you gonna take in consideration the handicap parking? Because by limiting the amount of parking and where it can go, will definitely affect the amount of handicap parking you have in the area. The second one is the store frontage and the needs of that storefront. How is it going to be determined if you have so much storefront, you get so many parking places? I think that's something you need to talk to the business owners on. Third one, and you've touched on that pretty well, was enforcement. Because we know how many officers we have on duty. And I'm not sure you're gonna be able to enforce it effectively. And also, I think you gotta consider who you have parking in them places. And I'm getting up there myself, at 68, parallel parking and that type of thing. I will only park when there's a good open area. If there's not a good open area, I won't park downtown. And then we talked about the storefronts, and if we're going to engage the businesses, being as everybody has a business license, I feel we need to do it through that, because that way it covers all the businesses.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
I think, I certainly think a temporary solution would suffice. And I don't think it really should take any sort of redesign or re-engineering of our current parking situation. Just and in regards to enforcement, I would agree that it'd be the most likely scenario would be the honor system, where a business has a sign out front that says, you know, this area for parking for XYZ customers only. And then I think to get more of a feel of the businesses that would utilize something like this downtown, I think a survey would make sense, and not just a survey, but potentially maybe even a sign up that they would say, yeah, we would appreciate 2 spots, or you know, whatever that looks like. So so that then we have an idea of how many spots would actually be used or reserved for businesses downtown, and how many or how much area would then be open for anybody.
So Jake, just to clarify, you're talking about like during COVID for people doing curbside pickup or dropping off documents, or having documents curbside, or things like at the pharmacy,
Exactly.
the law firm,
exactly.
that kind of thing.
Pharmacy, 1866,
Right.
flashbacks.
Yeah, so the businesses that it would apply to, some businesses might not be interested. You can't get your hair cut in your car
Of course.
or
sure.
go in and look at plumbing supplies from
Sure.
your car. So it wouldn't really apply to that
And
many businesses specifically. Just a
one-
handful, it sounds like, might appreciate that type of convenience for their customers who are still, wanting to do curbside, not enter a business, that type of thing.
Right. One of the examples was a law office downtown that will frequently have someone who just needs to come in and sign a document. And if they come and park downtown, if the spaces in front of their office are taken, they don't know if they're down there. So having the ability to have a couple spots right up front where someone can pull up and they can visually see that they're there, go out, get them to sign, and boom, they're on their way.
Any further questions or discussion? So what would be the action here? I'm all right with what Jake said about doing a survey. I don't see any way we cannot allow it as long as we allow it for the funeral home, and we have to allow it for the funeral home just out of respect for people, right? They block off parking spots in front of Quisenberries, don't they, during funerals?
They've got some dedicated off-street parking in a building, and I've seen a sign go up there that says it's restrictive parking, but I believe that's because they're the owners of that off-street parking lot. But we can certainly go have a discussion with these businesses if they're willing to have the discussion with us. And there might be some hidden details in here that we're not aware of. Or is it certain days? Is it certain time frames? Maybe it's not an everyday occurrence. I did notice once this discussion started, I tried to just walk up and down 4th Street and take a look at what's going on. And there's other provisions that we don't do a great job of enforcing during this time of year when it snows. Each business or storefront is responsible for removing snow from the area in front of their business. And we don't do a great job of enforcing that, just as not all of our businesses do a great job of complying to that. And I could see where if I was a business owner and I cleared the sidewalk and then I watched patrons of another business park there because, it was more convenient because the business they were going to didn't bother to clear it. And so I just want to make sure that before we come up with a new policy, that we understand as many of the factors that are influencing the situation. But what I'm hearing tonight is that it's definitely geared more towards a temporary setup as opposed to any sort of long-term solution. So I don't think it'll take that long to reach out to all of those businesses, and whether we want to wait until the next meeting to enact something like that, I mean, we're a couple of weeks away. I think we could easily present to you then more facts if it's, this is something we need every day, but for this short-term period to get through COVID or until the crisis is reduced, or if it occurs very specific times. And I think once you have that piece, you'd probably would feel a little bit more comfortable if we enacted a policy. But I appreciate the discussion and hearing where all of you are coming from on it, and I think that'll help us form better the details we bring back to you on it.
Okay. Is that satisfactory for council? Okay, we'll move on to item, sorry, I lost my place, G.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is presented as a report in response to a question Mr. Hempel raised at the last city council meeting about mobile food vendors and the fees associated with those. In particular, his question noted investigating whether during the COVID-19 pandemic, other cities were making adjustments to help either encourage them or also, on the other hand, protect local businesses from maybe competition that had a leg up because of the transient nature of those mobile food vendors that come for a short duration into the community. The agenda statement prepared for the packet was based on research that Heather Holick and the administration department completed. She did a survey of I believe it's 7 other communities. That survey, the summarized results are included in the agenda packet as the very last page. Her findings were very interesting. First, we're sort of in the middle of the pack on fees. 3 communities could be considered lower cost than us: Basser, DeSoto, and Bonner Springs. Each of them have a particular rationale to building their cost. Several other communities were on par with us, and the cities of Lawrence and Leavenworth in particular did exceed our cost in most regards. Some cities also offer a daily permit fee. Leavenworth and Lawrence are among those. So while they have higher costs for their annual permits, they offer the same $10 fee per day that we are able to offer in our current fee structure. The big takeaways from looking at the history of our rates: before 2016, our fees were $50 for a daily permit, $250 for a monthly permit, and $500 for an annual permit. In 2016, a local business owner approached the city council at the time and asked for consideration of reducing those fees to help encourage food trucks, which I assume under those fees were probably pretty few and far between because they do have to look at those costs when they consider coming to the city. The fees were lowered to the current rates of $10 a day, $50 for a month, or $100 on an annual basis, which includes their business license to the city and that fee. We did also a quick analysis of how many we're experiencing in this community. Right now, we have 2 for 2021 annual permits, but in the last 4 years, we've had 9 in 2017, 2 in 2018, 3 in 2019, and 6 in 2020. So you can see there has been a slight increase, and our survey results confirm that a few other communities have had a slight increase, but usually that's moving from 3 to 5 or from 5 to 7. It's not exponentially growing, I guess is how you'd describe it. So in looking at this and kind of parsing through the information, we do have flexibility in what we could elect to do, either on a short-term basis or long-term, but based on the amount of permits and the revenue, realistically, it's not a huge budget impact. One thing I would mention is there is some coordination required to administer these and take the required documents and issue the license. So the $10 fee and probably our $50 fee are somewhat effective in capturing our costs, but if we're looking to increase it, a minor increase to those would probably be the best to actually make sure the whole process is cost neutral for the city to complete, in addition to other tasks going on at City Hall. But happy to answer any questions or take the feedback of the City Council if you want us to evaluate making changes.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Mr. Hempel, you brought this issue to us, and thank you for doing that. Do you have any comments or discussion here?
Well, my comment is there's 2 types of revenue. There's tax and there's the revenue to the business. The revenue to the business might make a difference whether that business stays afloat or not. And that's the reason why I brought it up. The tax, it will come to the city and the county regardless because it was here. But the revenue towards that business is not going to be here if it goes someplace else. And that was my concern.
Any other discussion? Does anyone favor an increase to $25?
So, as a business owner of a downtown business, days when many food trucks are in town, for example, Tonganoxie days, or past successful Sunflower Stroll days, those are some of the busiest days for downtown businesses. That's when I look at my colleagues who own other establishments downtown and we say, wow, that was a busy day for us. And those are days, because there's a lot going on, that there's a lot of energy around the downtown, and a lot of people are coming downtown. Sometimes residents of Tonganoxie who are coming downtown for the very first time and saying, wow, I didn't know you had a downtown. We have a downtown here. So a lot of people discover what we have to offer during the times when there's something new or novel going on. Eventually, this town is going to have, we hope, we're not going to dry up and blow away, right? Eventually, we aspire to have new, novel, fun things to do, and we think that we'll probably get another restaurant here. And as a business owner myself, I think competition is good. As a business owner, I think it keeps me at my best, knowing that there's somebody else there, and I want to not focus on what they're doing, but I know that I need to keep my edge on, and competition is to be expected. Amenities are what people seek when they move to a new community. Food truck isn't here all the time. They travel around to all these cities, the same people who are coming to Eudora and Lawrence and Basehor and Lansing and Leavenworth. They're coming here. They're not here all the time. And I think that for the citizens who do go there and stop in, it's something like an amenity. It's something different that's going on. It's something fun that's going to happen, and they look forward to it. I would like to look at this as an opportunity to say, how can we highlight our own restaurants in a neat way, in a fun way? Can't we host our own Taste of Tonganoxie and have all of our own restaurants come forward and have an event that highlights all of our restaurants and have them come out and have an event? We could also host separately from that a food truck festival, invite food trucks from all around. Their friends and their family would come to support them. And they would also say, hey, wow, Tonganoxie's pretty neat. They have a cool downtown. As a business owner downtown, I've seen people discover us because they've come in to see a music performer or come in to celebrate a friend's birthday or graduation or come back for a reunion, and they are surprised how amazing this town is. And without novel and unique things, I don't know if we have seen the big picture enough. I want our restaurants to succeed, and I patronize them a lot. I mean, this is why I gained the quarantine 15, but I also think that there's a place for something new and novel, and I think our community is better for being open to those opportunities. And when I thank you to the staff for putting together all the information about what it costs in other communities, because I honestly didn't know until I looked at your information. I think we're right on par with what other towns are doing. We could raise the rates $5, $10 per level. That's fine. I don't think that'll be prohibitive, but I think being a prohibitively expensive town for food trucks, I think we're going to stab ourselves in the foot, but I think we should look at the big picture and do something really neat and awesome to promote our own restaurants and at the same time embrace possibilities. One of these restaurants may decide to land and open a new spot in one of these communities where they're spending time, and they may do that by how ingratiating and welcoming that community is.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Are there any more comments? Do we have a direction for staff? Is there a proposal for a direction for staff? Okay. We will keep it where it is. Thank you for doing all that work. And please extend our thanks to Ms. Holick and the crew. Item H, City Manager Agenda.
Mayor, we don't have any additional items for this evening.
Thank you. Item I is City Attorney Agenda. Good to see you.
You too, Mayor. I have no items either.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Agenda.
I have no items, Mayor.
Thank you. City Council Agenda. Any council members?
None here.
All right, thank you. Under my agenda, I would like to go into an executive session for discussion of personnel matters of non-elected personnel. And I would need someone to make a motion, and it needs to parrot this piece of paper.
I moved.
George,
Oh, go ahead,
George?
Chris.
George, I think that not being in attendance, I don't know that I feel very comfortable attending a executive session.
What are you,
Uh,
what are you proposing, Chris?
Well, I don't know that. Can you move the phone, or is that an appropriate thing to do? I just want to make sure we don't mess nothing up.
You know, I can put you
So I
on
don't
speak.
have any proposal other than,
We
I'm
do.
not sure how it would work logistically.
No, Mr. Donnelly, we do have the same phone capacity that we're using right now for you to conduct the meeting. And Ms. Kerstala could comment just to verify that we would still be within all of the appropriate guidelines.
Okay, as long as we follow the rules, I'm absolutely okay with it.
It's fine.
All right, I move that the city council recess into executive session to discuss the city manager's annual review process pursuant to the personnel matters of non-elected personnel, exception KSA 75-4319B1. The open meeting will resume in the city council chamber at 9:10 p.m. The executive session will include the city attorney, city manager, and assistant city manager. There you
We
Oh.
go.
accept a friendly to 8:10 instead of 9:10 p.m.
Oh, 8:10, excuse me,
Thank you.
8:10 p.m.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're in executive session. I'm
I
sorry.
think on the
I'll
staff,
second.
what could we, Mr. Dale, would you mind repeating all of the staff that you asked to participate? I didn't catch that on my note.
The executive session will include city attorney, city manager, and assistant city manager.
Thank you.
Okay, we good to go in? Okay, we'll be. Okay, we are back in session. No motion, I'm sorry, no binding action was taken in the executive session. With that, I'll say go Chiefs, and do we have a moment to adjourn, or a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Aye.
Our next meeting is the 16th, right?
That's right, Mayor.
Thank you. All right.